Hello, welcome again. Today I am talking about a pink and purple stained glass candle holder. Now, as you can see, it is very small. I'm using Studio Pro black backed copper foil, 7/32 inch with, because I really like that foil. It's not that expensive and it really sticks well. So first of all, I bought these 2-inch diameter metal hoops that you can use for dream catchers or macrame projects. I got these on Amazon, and I'll put the link in my description page. And you need to foil them because they are made out of some kind of metal alloy that solder won't stick to. So there's two different ways that I foil something like this. So one way is to put one piece of foil all the way around the inside and then squish it down really nicely or burnish it with, I'm using a plastic fid. You can use anything that's not going to scratch up the foil too much, but you want to smooth it down and kind of meld it into the metal so that it ends up staying nice and in place when you're soldering. So after I do this to one layer, then I put another one on the outside. Now, this is the way I foil any of my metal projects, so that I can either wrap it around or do this going the long way. There is, of course, pros and cons with either direction that you do. If you don't squish it down smoothly or you heat it up too much while you're soldering things to it, then it can end up peeling up. I've also used wider foil and just used one piece wrapped all the way around. So it really depends on what you have, but you want to choose a foil that is really sticky. You don't want to use one that doesn't adhere very well because it will come up once you're using it. So anyways, this is one way I do it. Excuse me. I do the outside one after the inside because it takes heat better because I'm doing most of my soldering along the outside, and so it won't come up as much if I have that piece done second. And with these normal macrame hoops, two pieces is enough to go all the way to cover the whole thing. So this is the other way, is to wrap it like this. You want to take a kind of a long piece of foil, but not too long that it starts getting, falling apart as you're working. And you don't want to get your fingers on the sticky part a lot because it will tend to stop sticking as much. And then you need to burnish it down thoroughly so that you have a nice smooth surface to work on. This method works very nicely in that you don't have as much of a peel up. There's not as much of a chance of it coming up as you're soldering because they're overlapped. But, and you can see the two different ways, they look pretty similar. So this is a wide piece of foil that I am cutting for the base. And you can cut it in whatever width you want. So the other thing with wrapping it around, like I showed you, wrapping it around in a circle like that, it's a little bit more time consuming. So it's really up to you. So with something like this, like the base, it looks better and works better if you do it in one piece because then it won't have the lines of the many different pieces when you're done. Now I'm using 22 gauge bare copper wire, and I'm using a baling pliers, and you just need to find the right size object to wrap your wires around to make a nice wire frame for your glass globs so that they are supported better. So whatever diameter your globs are, just find something. It doesn't have to be a tool like this. It can be a pen, a paintbrush, anything that's round, a dowel that you can easily use to create this loopy thing. Obviously, if you crimp it too many times, your wire will break. Well, when it breaks, that's okay. You can just solder the two pieces together. Now for this project, I used these small rectangular pieces of glass that came in different colors, and they have 2 holes in them, and I used that for the bulk of the design. I'm using small 10 millimeter glass globs that I am soldering to my little loops, my wire loops that I did earlier. Now for these glass globs, I would take my 7/32 inch foil and cut them in 4 different widths. You know, the length of it, I would go 4 different small, thin pieces and just foil the edge of the glass. Now, of course, it's very time consuming to just do the edge, and you have to really burnish it down nicely because it does have a tendency to want to pop out when you're soldering. So you got to be really careful and only heat up a little bit at a time on a certain piece of glass because it will fall apart. And of course, if you use a lot of flux like I am right now, you don't want to heat up very much. Just tack it in place for now, and then come back and add a little heat and a little solder to one area, and then come back later when it's cooled. If you don't, as I said, they will pop out. Now this particular section obviously wasn't very long. As I said, the wire does break if you twist it too much, and too much can be just like 3 twists sometimes will break the wire. So don't get discouraged. It's okay. You can put 2 parts together to make the string that you want to make. Now I took those rectangular parts and I just kind of looped them on and around and around and around both 2 pieces of the 2-inch wire foiled hoops that I had. Now I am trying to place this evenly so that, you know, it looks concentric to the base. They actually were the same size. I'm just, of course, the round glass that I added kind of wasn't perfect and it distorted it, so I have to kind of bend the top part and get it so that it lines up. And that's just life. It takes a little bit of pressure and just going around and around and around the circle and adjusting those glass globs so that they actually line up the way I want them to. And of course you could foil tin everything originally before you even attach stuff, so you can add solder to all the copper before you do any of the assembly, or you can wait till later. See, as you notice, I'm just adding a little solder to each one. I'm not trying to solder around one whole piece all at once, because if I did that, the glass would pop out, and yeah, I don't want to do that. And even when you try to give it your best and not heat it up too much, they still can pop out. It doesn't take much. You could use wider foil when you did your original foiling on the glass globs, but then you won't have that pretty round glass look. You would have kind of a probably unevenish round look, and it would be a lot wider because the foil would take up width, and it would encroach upon your small glass. Now, if you're foiling something large, like your standard flat glass, you're making some glass window looking project, you can overlap the glass a lot without it looking weird, because it's okay. The glass that you're doing is wide, it's a wide area, and it won't take up the look of your design. But if you're doing something really small like this, you want to leave as much of the pretty colored glass as possible. That's why you don't want to overlap too much. Now, the nice thing about using something like these rectangular glass shapes that I'm using is that they had holes in the top and the bottom, and I actually got those from Temu. I haven't seen them on Amazon at this point, but you never know. They might show up at some point. But they're glass, and they have a hole at the top and a hole at the bottom. So I didn't have to foil those, which was kind of nice, because then you get a really strong hold, because I just have a wire wrapped around it, and I don't have to worry about that look of a piece of foil between each one. Yes, it's a little different look, but I thought it looked very nice for this. Now, for the top of my project, I use these glass globs that are flat on the bottom and quite domed on the top. And these particular ones are purplish, so I thought they would look very nice with my purple and pink glass that I used around the middle. The bottom glass that I put on earlier, those were light pink. They don't show that they're light pink that well in the photographs, but they are. They're very, very light pink, so they went very nice. I guess you can see a little bit of the pinkness. Now, after I did a bunch of these purple, I attached a bunch to these. It's hard to know how many to do, You don't want to curve the string of glass too early, because then it's harder to solder the glass onto the round wire that you did once they're bent into a curve. So I usually just do a long bunch and then hope it's enough, and then start soldering them on. Now, some of the glass candle holders I did, I used a form on the inside to help hold everything sturdy, but because this one is so simple and I'm not using any wire curly cues, coils in the middle, I'm not having any center design except for these rectangular glass. See, I've figured out how wide I want it. I didn't need to have that support in the middle. Now, when you get almost to the end, you want to see if it's actually going to connect evenly. Now, that's one of the things with making something like this. You never know if it's going to meet perfectly when you get done. So I usually, when I get to the end, when I'm about halfway through, I wrap it around, and then I kind of split the difference and try to make it evenly spaced going around. And this particular time, I ended up with, I didn't do enough of the purple stones in the wire, so I had to fill one more with a glass glob, but that's okay. So as you can see again, I am going around and just adding solder slowly to different pieces as I go. I'm not heating one up all at once, because that would be a total disaster. And even with this way of doing things, you can still have a problem with the glass popping out. Now, if it pops out at this point, I would probably replace the glass and clean the round wire place, and then put a piece of glass in it. If it popped out later on when I'm all done with my project, I usually just glue it back in with some kind of super glue or silicone glue. If you wanted to fix it when it's all done, you have to clean it perfectly with, with your solder, and really, really clean the area. If you have it polished, you got to get that polish off, and because you really want to have it perfectly clean in order to accept solder again. So if one falls out, or if you need to add one, what I'm doing is I have a thick piece of silicone. I'm using um, between my thumb and or my fingers and the project so I don't burn myself while I'm working. Even though I'm using silicone gloves, it still can get hot. You try to protect yourself as much as possible. But if you want to add something to it, like I did right then, you need to support it in order to add something. Because you can't, you have to hold it somehow. And you want to have it smooth and flush with the wire. Now I just went around, made sure everything was soldered. I patinaed this in black, and I think it looked really pretty with a real candle. Really helps the shine. Thank you for watching.